Here are some questions that I got from Malibu magazine, and so I thought I would answer them. So question number 1. Your videos began as a means of tutoring your cousins and now exist as a resource to educate the world, which must be hugely inspiring. And yes, it is, and a bit surreal. Your model is hyperscalable because any one lecture can be viewed an infinite number of times anywhere, but it's also very dependent on your personal input. Do you ever feel overwhelmed by the idea of having to record one more, or based on expectations, hundreds of more videos, or ever question the notion that you should be the Khan Academy's only lecturer? So in the first part, do I ever feel overwhelmed? Not in the way that I guess it sounds like this is phrasing. I'm actually, this is what is really exciting about me, and almost from my own selfish point of view, this is one of the reasons why I love doing this, is that I get to spend the rest of my life doing what I really enjoy, which is teaching, and many times learning and teaching. So or teaching myself a new way of looking at something, or getting to make connections between things that I've never been able to have the luxury to explore before. So I view it as a luxury more than something that would overwhelm me. So I really love this aspect of getting to do more and more videos, and I hope that I never that as long as I live, I'm able to continue to making videos, and at least hundreds more per year. Which I even though there is a lot of responsibility of the organization, and being one of the people who help manage what is now this organization that's beyond me, the Khan Academy, I always want to be spending a significant amount of my time making videos, because that's really what I love. And then the second part of it, you ever question the notion that you should be the Academy's only lecturer? And that's a big yes. But the answer to that has never been completely obvious, because I think one of the reasons why we've gotten a lot of traction is the consistency and the trust, and because when you learn from someone, it actually takes a lot of trust to invest your own mental cycles in them, and I think people have kind of have learned to trust the Khan Academy, and so we never thought that it should be this kind of thing that everyone can throw videos on. And frankly, there are already things that it's called YouTube, or other things like it. And we think it's jarring when you have different quality and you have different teachers, even if they are good. And so that's what we struggled with. And we also think that there's kind of an understanding, an agreement with the student that content on the Khan Academy will focus on conceptual development over mechanical understanding. It'll be conversational. It won't talk down to the student. It will talk to everyone as if they are smart, but not talk in a way that assumes that someone knows all of the terminology, or kind of not talk past people. And so it's been very important that we bring, and nothing sounds scripted. Everything sounds authentic. Everything is directly coming from a person. That's kind of a person-to-person communication, not a corporation-to-person communication. And so these are surprisingly hard things to find, and we've been searching. And what you'll see in the next few months is we actually are bringing on some other lecturers, in particular in the humanities, who will be lecturers in the humanities. And I love them. The videos that I've watched of theirs made me wish that I had them as teachers when I was growing up, and I hope other people have that same reaction. And the other thing that people have begun to notice is the last few weeks we've been experimenting with bringing contributors in who I kind of interview, and we're experimenting with that form factor to see if it's something that makes sense, or maybe something that just complements the broader library. I'll always be doing the independent, traditional, Sal teaching type of thing, but I've really been enjoying getting these experts in, and being able to kind of play the student role. So the simple answer is yes, we have questioned it, and over the next few months, you're going to see actually the faculty of the Khan Academy expand in a pretty substantial way. Question number 2. One of the most difficult things for people to wrap their heads around is the idea that you're not interested in monetizing the Academy. Cold hard cash pales next to the intrinsic value of the tools you've created and their attendant legacy. But if the Academy will never be a source of wealth, do you think you'll eventually turn your attention to another for-profit driven venture? So the simple answer is no. I've gone through the mental simulation multiple times. If someone were to give me $1 billion, this is exactly what I would want to do, and so I get a chance to do it now. So regardless of whatever happens, if for whatever reason you see Sal saying, "Hey, I'm done with the Khan Academy. I now want to go start managing money again," or if I want to go start doing X or Y, people should wonder whether I've been abducted and replaced by someone else, because I consider myself the luckiest person on the planet that I get to do what I'm doing now, and hopefully for the rest of my life. and hopefully it's a decent, respectably long life, but you never know. Yes, and so and you've articulated in the question exactly. I mean, I think I'm not someone who doesn't mind a little bit of cold hard cash, but at the same time, the satisfaction of people really enjoying this stuff, we're genuine about it. We really love it. And I think it's not just me; it's most of our team. If you look at the people on the Khan Academy team, some of them are actually very well known in their respective domains, and even the ones that aren't well known, they really are all rock stars. We are really bringing on. This is really the most amazing team that I've ever worked with, and I've worked with a lot of very, very smart people in the past, and they've all turned away higher paying jobs at pre-IPO companies where they could make millions of dollars to work on this project. And so it's not just me. I am actually surrounded by people who are similarly inspired by this mission, and I hope that they continue to want to do this for a long time. Question number three. When you say that you'd like to make the Academy self-sustaining in 5 years, what do you mean? If you don't charge for the videos, what will be the source of funding? So this not charging for the videos. This is kind of core to our religion of the Khan Academy. Not that Khan Academy is religion, but core to what we hold dear. And that's true also for our software. And as far as what the source of funding will be, it's an open question. I mean, there's ideas on the table. One could be, maybe, and I don't know what all of the ideas are. We are building hopefully a trusted brand here, and maybe, the way Sesame Street does it. People they license Elmo out, so I don't know. Maybe, and I have to say that half jokingly, but that's one way that Sesame Street has really kind of supported themselves, and we think we're kind of like Sesame Street, but for older kids and adults. In terms that we're making learning approachable for them. So maybe that type of model might work. We do hope that foundations continue to support us forever to some degree. I mean, we don't want to be 100% reliant on that, but we do think relative to the impact it's having, our budget is still smaller than most individual schools, even elementary schools, and we're able to reach millions of students now, and that same content that's already produced can reach tens of millions for a long, long time. We also hope that our user base supports us. We definitely don't mind if people say, "Wow, that really helped me. Let me go to PayPal, or let's send Khan Academy $20, or let me give them $5 from my paycheck every month if they can afford it." And so we hope that people are already doing that, and as our user base grows, we think that could also help us. So the simple answer is we always want to have no barrier to accessing the knowledge, but we do think that there will be ways over the next 5 to 10 years so that we can at least support our base salaries and our operating expenses, so that this resource never goes away. But we don't want to be complacent about that. So I do encourage people to donate. Question number 4. What influence have the Gates Foundation and other donors had on the scope or evolution of the Academy? Example, is it now a collaborative effort, and if so, what are their objectives and how might they differ from yours? So at a first level, our supporters, Gates Foundation is a large supporter. Google is another major supporter. We've had several major individual supporters. They've treated us in a great way. There are obviously people whose opinion we really want and want to take into account, but they have said, look, what's made Khan Academy work is this kind of grassroots. Y'all have tried stuff and y'all saw what works, and based on what works, you keep doing more of it and you keep iterating on the process. And so they've given us a lot of freedom to explore the space and make decisions on our own and pursue the things that we've found or are compelling for our students. But with that said, they have a bunch of good ideas, and so we are taking those great ideas into consideration. And I think the one thing that especially the Gates Foundation has brought to the table is that they've really plugged us into a lot of the other stuff that's going on in education research, and kind of helping to make those connections. And I think it's helping us to from Khan Academy, from being just like this kind of quirky thing that one guy did, and we want to keep it a quirky thing, but it also helps us interface with the more authoritative side of the education world. Question number 5. Your videos are now being leveraged to drive more intense classroom learning by flipping the classroom, as I've said. And as I've said in many videos, we view the flip as halfway. The ideal is kids using the software in the videos to work at their own pace anytime, and then they use class time for the real interventions and interactions with their peers. And you have had some very clear opinions about how to improve the educational experience. I just gave one of them. Do you have any aspirations around a larger role in educational reform? So I've learned, so reform seems like a good word, but I've learned that it can be a loaded word. And so if this question is, do I want a role as like a state superintendent of education, or a no? The answer is a very clear no. I don't want to get involved at all in the political debate. I think I think we are valuable, or we can be valuable, or let me put it this way: we strive to be valuable to everyone, and so we don't want anyone to have a predisposition against us just because Sal says he feels X, Y, and Z about some hot button issue there. So if that's the question, we say no. If it's do we want to be a catalyst in maybe the reform conversation being a clear thinking conversation? Maybe when now maybe we can provide common ground. Maybe everyone in the debate agrees that class time is better spent when it's interactive. Everyone agrees that ideally students should be allowed to work at their own pace. Everyone agrees that teachers are adding more value, or going up the value chain when they are mentors, when they are diagnosing students, when they are providing things that videos and on-demand exercises can't. When everyone agrees that it's really valuable for teachers to get real-time data so that they can make those interventions in a valuable way. So we hope that we're a catalyst, or we have aspirations about serving those functions, about maybe clarifying or finding common ground. But I have no aspirations at all about becoming some type of a pundit on the kind of political debates around this. Question number 6. What's the most important thing you've learned through the process of establishing and growing the academy, and have there been any unintended consequences? I think the most important thing is that I've learned the power, and it's something that I always suspected, kind of with an engineering background, but the power of you need to be kind of close to the person who the consumer or the end user, and then to really understand the problems, and then you should try to put something out that's even very simple and basic and see if it works, and not make any assumptions that more technology is good or fancier is better, but just try to solve the need at hand, but try to solve it quickly. Don't try to plan and talk about it for years and get funding and do all this stuff before you've tried stuff out. So the big takeaway I've had, is kind of my way I would have operated beforehand, but it's really made me feel even strongly about this, is build, test, and iterate things, and don't get into weeks long debates that focus on the meanings of words and whether one research study is saying one thing or the other research study is saying the other. Just build stuff, put it out there, and see if it works. And the unintended consequences is that this idea of a lot of what Khan Academy is doing is, I think, obvious, and people have been talking about this for a long time. But I think that attitude of just, look, let's not talk about it, let's do something about it, has allowed us to get traction in a space where there really hasn't been a lot of traction from things like what we're doing. Question number 7. You are supernumerate and offer lots of performance data to leverage teachers' efforts. Are teachers, many of whom may not be as naturally data-centric, embracing these tools, or are you finding resistance? What other criticisms are you hearing from professional educators or administrators? So the first part of it, are we finding resistance? No, not at all. The teachers who we've been working closely with, who've actually been helping to define some of these tools, they love it. And if anything, their main feedback is, some of the 5th grade teachers, they teach all the subjects. So now they feel unarmed with data when they're teaching other subjects. So they want us to go into those other subjects as quickly as possible so that they can start to have that data. So that the teachers, we found, really do love the data. And in terms of what other criticisms are you hearing from professional educators, I think some criticism is, what is new here? Hey, isn't this just lecture? And look, even those lectures aren't using anything fancy. They're just literally a guy chatting about something with and kind of writing on a board. And they're right. There isn't anything new here. And I think what they're missing the point is, it's not always about the idea. A lot is about the craftsmanship or what happens on the ground. And I think a lot, especially the publishing companies, I think they miss the point that human to human interaction, that it's important when it's real humans, but it's also important when it's human interacting with a product. They don't want to feel like something is overproduced. They want to feel like they're talking to someone who cares. And it's also more important to focus on deep understanding and conceptual understanding and why a subject is beautiful. It's more important to focus on that than on fancy graphics and on fancy, whatever. I try to improve my penmanship, and I try to improve, I try to draw nice diagrams to so people understand things. But we never are going to be that place that says we have the fanciest graphic. I mean, maybe if a really fancy graphic is compelling, we'd want to integrate it, but we don't want to do it just for the sake of it, just to impress other people in the computer graphics space that we have the best one. So that's one kind of knee-jerk reaction of like, wait, this is pretty basic. Why is this interesting? And the answer is, it is pretty basic, but maybe to some degree that is why it's interesting. That is why it's why people are finding it compelling. The other interesting, I think the other reaction we get is when some people learn about, look, kids learning at their own pace, using software, people using videos to learn. They believe that this is somehow trying to replace the classroom, or trying to replace the interaction with the teacher. And for us, we just think that's a misconception. We think we're the exact 180 degrees opposite. We are a catalyst for enhancing the interaction with the teacher. The teacher will no longer be lecturing at the students. They will now be discussing with students. They will now be having those small group discussions that everyone, I think, recognizes is the best way to learn. They'll now be leading projects that I think everyone agrees is a really great way to learn, especially if it's augmented with kids getting a lot of practice and being able to get a lot of their core skills to some degree at their own pace. I think those are the really two areas. And there's some resistance about the idea of more voices on the Khan Academy, and that's, I already talked about it earlier. We are bringing more voices to the table, and we do want to make tools so that teachers themselves can also contribute to the platform, and all of that's coming. And we're going to have the crowd, hopefully, if we can think of a good way, curate what makes sense to add in. But we want to do all of that without losing a lot of the consistency and even the quirkiness that we think makes Khan Academy work right now. Number 8, the content is heavily weighted towards math and science. What's your plan for building more humanities content, and how do you choose what to add to the site and when? For example, what drove the decision to add a playlist about the Paulson financial bailout versus another series of history lessons? So our plan on the humanities, the answer is yes. We actually are, I think they accepted today, and we're going to make the announcement once we integrate some of their work more deeply with the site. But we've brought on 2 professors in the humanities, and I love what they've already done, so I hope everyone can start getting excited about it, because I think they'll be pretty happy with what they've done. And I think they've tackled the humanities in a very interesting way. In fact, this new technique of me doing conversations with people, this was inspired by them, because the humanities, and many of the humanities, are very subjective, and they've got this really neat way of having a conversation about subjective things that bring more than one way to think about something to light. And I think it also encourages students to think of what their own opinions about something are, and not just to take the professor's opinion as gospel. And then, for example, what drove the decision to add a playlist about the Paulson financial bailout versus another series of history lessons? That one in particular was amidst of the financial crisis, and I just saw stuff on TV that I thought was wrong. I was still working at a hedge fund then, and I was spending most of my time reading, the Federal Reserve Act, and I was reading all of the details of a lot of these bailouts, and it just felt like there was a huge gap between what the public understanding was and what the real reality was. And I also thought that it was a very unbalanced conversation in the public, that essentially this thing was being steamrolled forward. The take from the interested parties was, trust us on this, bail us out. If you even think about it for another day, we have a gun to the economy, or a bomb is about to blow up in the economy, and we're all going to, everything's going to go to hell in a handbasket if we don't address those issues. And so, I thought another more hopefully rational voice was needed, because there were some very irrational things happening. So it was really just, and people were asking me a lot of questions at parties and things, and so I was like, hey, let me scale up my answer. But the general idea is there's a constant tension between what is useful, hey, look, we still haven't done those type of algebra videos, let's do those. And there's just stuff that's current events that needs answering, and then there's just some quirky things that I just happen to run into that I find interesting, and I'm just dying to make a video, and I'll do those. So it's a constant balance between all of those things. Question number 9. Your FAQ answer on your website about your religion is very eloquent, but why did you feel compelled to put it on the site at all? Did people in fact frequently ask about your religious beliefs? Yes. Many people did ask about my religious beliefs, and they wanted confirmation one way or the other about my religion. And so I thought that that FAQ answer was actually the best way to address that question, because that is actually how I feel about my religion. Question number 10. Question number 10. The American educational system is broken in many ways, but we also have a problem of misallocation of resources in that highly educated minds gravitate towards hedge funds, investment banks, and other lucrative professions, and away from teaching and other professions that are more productive for society as a whole. Given your highly relevant personal career shift, do you have any ideas about how to change that misallocation? I think people go into a career for multiple reasons. I think one is, intellectual stimulation, and teaching is as or more intellectually stimulating than many of those other higher paid careers. They go into something for compensation, and that's something where, at least definitely at the K through 12 level, there isn't that compensation. And they also go into it for respect. And the one example I give here is professors. There isn't any crisis of great minds going into academia, even though academia really has the compensation in academia, even though it's just as competitive to become a tenured professor at a great university, or actually more competitive to become a tenured professor at a university than make partner at a prestigious bank or hedge fund or private equity firm, you still have a lot of people going into academia despite the lack of compensation. They make more than K through 12 teachers, but not nowhere near what those same people would make if they went into industry. And I think the reason why really, really, really smart people, and not to say that really, really smart people aren't going to K through 12, but it's just their threshold of passion has to be so high that it can overcome these other things. But the reason why you have less of a problem in the higher education is I think you have a high degree of respect, and actually I'll add independence. I would say independence at the higher education level. That to some degree, the reason why you become a professor at university is that obviously you get a lot of intellectual stimulation, but you get a ton of respect and you get a lot of independence, especially once you get tenure. And so I think the solution here is get compensation. Compensation is important. Compensation has to go up. I think it has to at least get comparable to university professors. And so in this day and age, that's definitely in the a lot higher than where teachers are paid right now, but they don't have to get to investment banking salaries. But I think even more importantly, they have to be fields where teachers can express their creativity, and they're given much more power and respect than in a lot of cases they're given right now, and definitely even independence. And I think this is a role that we have, is that every iteration, every time government officials panic about the education system, they just micromanage it more, and that might, in their minds, de-risk the worst that's going on, but it also handicaps the best that's going on. And so it forces teachers to lose their independence. And we hope what we're advocating is that it makes the teachers, it gives them more independence to do what they want with class time, because so much is now taken off of, so much of the core stuff is now taken, students can do through the Khan Academy. And then the last question, extra credit, what is the next big step for the Academy? And I hinted at this several times. We are expanding the faculty, so that is a really big thing. And outside of that, we're just continuing to layer on more features. We're adding a lot more content on the exercise side. And I think you'll start to see in the next 6 months to a year exercises that go beyond our core math focus. Our videos obviously already go well beyond math, but you'll start seeing exercises that go beyond that. But I think the next really big one that's going to make waves is the faculty members that are not me.